Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast, where we focus on how authors found success, looking at strategies that have taken them to the top of the bestseller charts, as well as what they've learned from their mistakes. Because being an indie author is more than knowing the latest marketing trend. It's about being innovative and creative and learning from your mistakes.
Podcast. I'm Sarah Rosette.
And I'm Jamie Albright. And this week on the show we have
Deanna Roy.
Yes. Oh my gosh, y'all. It's so good. I didn't want it to end. It was so good. Deanna Roy, she has several pen names, but her most popular pen name is JJ Knight. And she's been just crazy successful with that pen name. And she has so much good knowledge and she just shares it really freely. So you're going to love it.
Yeah, this one was very interesting. We talked a lot about like writing craft and she talked about writing short stories. And, you know, we haven't really talked about short stories much. She talked about how that helps you. Talked about cover test. I thought that was really interesting.
It was very interesting. Yeah.
And another thing that stood out for me was her learning which books were cold, she could advertise to cold audiences and which ones she could advertise to warm audiences. So just imposter syndrome, we talked about too. So
she sort of had a moment where she thought, well, this is all over. I'm going to have to just get a job and maybe only write when I can. And then the JJ Knight pen name really took off and she hasn't looked back.
And she's licensed that to a traditional publisher. So there's something
really
in this
great
interview for everyone. So.
Really, it is.
Really
and
good.
then she talks to us about the recommendation engine on Amazon and it's just a lot of really great information. So let's talk about our supporters.
Yes. So we have new supporters this week. We have Christy Cole, and she has the crown. Yeah. And then we have Alexis Masters with the heart.
Yeah. And Susan LeDuc has the flexing arm, like strong arm.
Strong lady.
Yeah. So thank you guys for supporting us. If you want to support us, you can go to wishidknownforwriters.com to support us. We appreciate you guys so much. I just can't even tell you.
Yeah. It just makes us happy every time we see somebody supporting, and just to know that they're supporters for the podcast, that it's listener supported. It's just very cool.
Yeah. It's just affirming, and we really appreciate it. So anything going on with you this week?
Not much. I'm finishing up all the little things on the store, getting SarahRosetteBooks.com ready to go. Right. And that is about it. Like I was trying to think today, do I have anything to talk about? And really, no, that's about it. That's all I have going on.
Well, I don't have a whole lot. Was I talking about my Amazon and my Facebook ad? I can't remember. But anyway, I had this Facebook ad that just was crazy. Cost per click was super low, like below a cent. And everything on the ad looked great. But my money wasn't really matching that, But my rank was doing okay. So I just decided, and I have the attribution thing, and I'm not sure I really know how to read it correctly, but I just thought, you know what, I'm going to stop it. It wasn't a whole lot, but I just want to see, well, my rank has just plummeted in not a good direction. And so I guess it was doing something, but it just wasn't making the money. So I think I was getting downloads, but they must have been KU downloads and people hadn't read yet. I don't really know. So I'm going to change it. I'm going to try it again with a different audience and see if maybe I can get warmer readers as opposed to the colder readers. And we'll see what happens. But anyway, that's about it. I've just been looking at ads and stuff. Thanks everybody who's sent positive comments from last week's podcast. We appreciate it. I appreciate it. And
and also one other thing is Jamie does consulting. So if you want to chat with somebody about ways you can make your book sell better, Jamie's always doing consulting.
Yeah, I am. I right now, that's really all I'm doing. And in fact, I made a post today about a consulting call I had yesterday. It was actually a follow-up. And it was just so exciting because we had talked about a lot of things in the first call. And then yesterday was a week later. And she knew what she needed to do. It was just a hard decision. Mm-hmm. And she just needed somebody to say, yeah, you're making the right decision. Yeah, you've looked at all the information we talked about and you're making the right decision. But sometimes you just need that moral support. And
sometimes you need confirmation from another author, not from someone who's like your best friend from high school.
Right.
Who really
I've got the only emotional investment I have is that I want to see people succeed. Yeah. And that's it. I'm not emotionally tied to your covers, to your blurbs, to your mama who you wrote the book for. I'm not tied to any of that. I just want
she's
to see
impartial, except she's on your side.
Yes. But anyway, it just gives me tons of energy. It just makes me feel great. And actually, this author, she's super smart. She's super prolific. I mean, she just a little nudge is really all she needed to get going in the right direction. And I really think she's made a really wise choice. And I'm excited to see what happens. So, yeah, if anybody's interested, for podcast listeners, I give you a $25 discount. So just make sure you let me know that you're a listener when you email me, and you can email me. You can find the email link at my website, jamiealbright.com/consultation, I think is what it is. So,
yeah. All right. We'll put that in the show notes too.
Thanks.
So,
Thanks.
Okay. Well,
let's get on. We've got this great interview. You're going to love it.
Yes. All right. So here is Deanna. Well, today we are super excited to talk to Deanna Roy. Hi, Deanna. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you.
Well, we are glad you're here. I've been wanting to get you on, and I kept forgetting to ask. And so, I'm glad you're here. So,
all right. Well, let's read your bio here. Deanna Roy is a 6-time USA Today bestselling and Kindle all-star author of women's fiction and romantic comedy under 4 pen names, including J.J. Knight. She has published 65 books, both as an indie and with a traditional publisher. She is a baby loss mom, a foster and adoptive mom, and is a fierce mama bear. Mm-hmm. She trained with MMA fighters for one of her romance books and knows how to drop the average human in 5 moves.
Awesome. That. I didn't know that. When we were going over your bio just before we got on, I went, oh my gosh.
That was
awesome.
One of the reasons JJ and I did so well is because I did those PI class updates while I was taking. It was me at 44 with a bunch of 20-year-old guys. So, of course, it was great reading.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, tell us how you got into writing.
I'm one of those really, typical writers who, from the minute I started putting words together, I knew this was what I was going to do. So I wrote my first picture book when I was 6, and I wrote my first full-length novel when I was 16. Of course, all of us have trouble figuring out what are we going to do to actually support ourselves. I was very aware of that New Yorker cartoon. It has a guy sitting on a bench and says, what is the difference between a writer and a park bench? A park bench can support a family. So going into it, I knew I'm going to get a degree in journalism. I'm going to be an editor. So all that was part of the journey. Finding my author's voice was a big part of the late 80s and 90s mindset. So I wrote a lot of short stories. I got a few of them placed in a few small places, but I didn't get super serious about writing a full-length novel until I was 35. I discovered National Novel Writing Month in 2005. I was 35 years old and I wrote my first adult novel. So despite a very early start, I didn't actually really get into it until I got a little more settled. That year was pivotal in my life. It's one of those moments that your life sort of shifts, big monumental shift. I met my first group of writer friends. I was going through a divorce. I had 2 small children. I wanted to write a book. I didn't know how. National Novel Writing Month was a way for me to focus on it in a way I'd never done before. I also met my second husband. So it was an incredible month of my life.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was ready to look for an agent. It's 2005. We're still doing that. I spent the next 4 years writing about 4 to 5 novels and getting about 350 rejections. I remember turning 40 and going, this is what I've always thought my whole life I ought to be, and I'm not going to get here. When I was in high school, other people were getting Tiger Beat and 17 magazine, and I was actually skipping lunch a few days a month to buy the Writer magazine.
Yeah.
That was the magazine that I read while everyone else was looking at pictures of John Bon Jovi and things. Here I am, my little nerdy magazine. And here I am 40 and I've done almost nothing, a few short stories. And I'd written the books, but I couldn't get them to do anything. And in 2011, Jamie, I'm sure you'll remember this. I don't know if you were where you were, but Jay Conrath and Barry Eisler on my birthday. I mean, is that not a sign from the universe?
Wow.
On my birthday, I was 41, did that extremely long Google Doc that went viral because Barry had decided not to take a 6-figure advance. And instead he was self-publishing, and he laid out all the reasons why you should. And I sat there and read that thing, and it was like, eureka.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to self-publish these books that agents won't take. I can't get through the gatekeepers. I will be the gatekeeper. So I sat down to learn how to do it. By the end of 2011, I had published my first book. I had a little bit of a leg up in that I had a website that at the time got about 1 million hits a month.
Wow.
And it was on pregnancy loss. At the time, I don't think you were Googling me quite yet, maybe a little bit of Google, but it was still on Excite and Yahoo and some of those. I was like the second result for miscarriage symptoms. It was Mayo Clinic, then my little website. Wow. It's because I'd been around for so long. I'd started the website in 98. I was selling about $1,000 worth a month of affiliate money on Amazon, just with other people's books on pregnancy loss. So I thought, of course I can sell mine. And I had been using this angle with agents, and based on the strength of that, quite a few agents had requested, but none of them had wanted the book. I'm like, well, I'm going to do it myself. So I did. I published Baby Dust in 2011. It was the first adult book that I put out, first real big publishing project I put out. It didn't change the world. It didn't make me a full-time author. But over the 10 years, it's made about $25,000. And looking back, I think that's considerably more than I would have gotten for a women's fiction, very, small, sort of press type of book back in those days. So it was the right choice. It also, got me started.
Yeah.
Now, it would be 12 more books and 2 more years before I was able to become a full-time author. But once I did figure out the sauce, the pattern, the things I needed to learn, since then, that's all I've done.
Yeah, you haven't really looked back. Yeah. Actually, I don't remember that article or blog post because I wasn't writing then, but I had a similar experience with Roxanne St. Clair. She came and spoke at our RWA conference, and I was part of the group that took her to dinner the night before, and she had just turned down a 6-figure deal. Well, not just, it had been about 9 months. And in that 9 months, she had made more than the 6-figure deal that she turned down by self-publishing. And it was the same thing. I was like, oh, yeah, this is the way I'm going. Yeah. So same thing.
Yeah.
Same exact thing.
Yeah. The news got out quickly, and it spread kind of like wildfire that you could actually make money as a writer. It was like bizarre.
Well, and
People
just have control too.
Yeah.
That was really big.
Yeah.
Too.
Releasing books as often as you want is a big deal. I'm lucky, I have since signed a traditional publishing deal, but they're releasing my 2 books 3 months apart. That's pretty crazy.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Things have changed, huh?
Yeah, things have changed.
They've understood. They understand.
Yes. Yeah. And we're going to talk about that later. Yeah.
So, we'll get to that.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us, what is your definition of success?
Well, initially it was just succeeding at anything. Like, could I get anything done at all? I had placed a few short stories, but initially, of course, that first NaNoWriMo was, can I write 50,000 words in 30 days? And I think I could have stopped there. I'm like, I did a thing that lots of other people were doing. Of course, publishing Baby Dust was a big step. It's like, I actually have a book out in the world. People are reading it. This is fantastic. But for me, success, for what I was really looking for, and what I think I'd been looking for from even when I graduated high school and went into journalism, was to make my full-time income come from writing, and not the sort of writing that I had been doing. I had worked at a hospital. I wrote like publications for inside the hospital for patients. I had been at a magazine. I had written articles for them. None of those really felt like the thing that I wanted to do. But certainly by the time I was a full-time author's indie, I thought, okay, this, I'm here. I've done it. Now my definition of success is a little different. I have a couple different goals that I'm still reaching for. I think we continue to grow and try to advance, both with either our income or either with our quality or with our mindset or what we want to influence. At this point, I'm really hoping to have my full-time income stay while I also write a hobby set of books. This is something I've been trying to do since 2019, and it hasn't quite happened yet because the day job books keep taking up my time. I'm still working toward that goal where I write marketable books, and then I write these oddball little books that only a few people will buy just for my joy.
I think that's a great way to do it. If you can get to that point, I think that's a really good plan, because we all have those books that we want to write, but we think, it's going to be hard to make this a good business decision. But sometimes you need to do that for yourself, for your writing joy.
Absolutely.
Sort of clear the cobwebs or prime the pump for other creative endeavors or whatever your metaphor is. I agree. Well, tell us what you wish you'd known about writing and craft. So you had a degree in journalism, so it wasn't like me going in completely blind to writing and craft. So tell us what you wish you'd known.
I wish I had known that literature was not where I was going to land. I spent decades on literature when really my voice, when I did finally figure out sort of what it was, didn't really lend itself to writing literature. And also that writing literature is never going to be a day job. I mean, there's can we count on one hand, like Cormac McCarthy? I think that might be it. Unless they make movies from your literature, you're a professor or you lecture or you do something else. So giving that up sooner and doing what I loved reading romance novels. In fact, before I ever wrote one, I had a whole blog, and back when we were using GeoCities in like 98, I had a romance review blog, and I had thousands of reviews up there because I just inhaled them in the way that our readers do now. I could read one every few days. It was just how I got through the evenings and the weekends. So if I had done that sooner, I think I would have found success earlier in my life and not felt that I had so many years that I was seeped in frustration.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your short stories, because I hear a lot of people say, write short stories to learn to write. So how do you feel that's a good preparation for I don't know, is it a good preparation for writing novels, or is it just good writing chops?
Practice,
kind of some writing chops.
I think it's a lot of things. One, it is learning who you are and what you have to say. And getting it out sort of quickly. Sometimes, your first novel is daunting. I think it took me years to really finish my first novel. And now, I just finished a novel in 25 days, 75,000 word novel. I finished it on 2 days ago. That's the fastest I've ever done it. And I could only do that because I know my craft so well. I know story structure so well. I can spin characters so quickly. But early on, all those elements in a short story give you that sense of accomplishment on a shorter timeline, especially when it's your hobby. Of course, it's your hobby. You're doing it at night on weekends.
Right.
I always think back. I had a friend who was an artist, and he said, you spend like 3 years just drawing hands over and over again. You've got to draw the hands well before you can draw the person.
Right.
And I always think of the short story as the hands. They're the thing that gets you like all the little skills on a micro level that prepare you for that big book that you're going to eventually write.
Oh, I love that word picture, because you're right. Because the hands always give an artist away. I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but like you'll see a picture and you're like, that's so, what's happening at the end of their arm because the hands are too big or they're too small. Yeah. So it's true that I love that because that is true. You learn to do those little things that really set your stories apart, helps you find your voice. Yeah, that's a great analogy.
I've been teaching a beginner class. I only teach it once a year, and I'm actually moved on to intermediate for the writers who get texts. I kind of do it as a fundraiser for them. But for about 5 years, once a year, I teach a abject, just beginner class. You've not published a thing. And one of the things I tell them, and this is on the short story idea, is to publish a short story first. Like practice on a short story. There's no shiny reason to be a debut author with your book of your heart that you've been writing for 10 years when you're in the indie space. It's not like the trad space.
Right.
Practice the process. Get a cover made. Put it on Kindle, get that little paperback, tiny little paperback that's only 50 pages or whatever. Get it done, get it in your hands, understand what a gutter is, figure out what you've done before you put that big book of your heart, the one that you wrote because your grandma, told you should. That one is so big. Every single time I tell them, don't publish that yet. Like, let's set that one aside. Can you write a short story in that world? Can you write a prequel in that world? If it's nonfiction, can you take one of your points, write a whole bunch of like anecdotes with that point and publish that? Because it will serve you so well, not just as your practice run, but it will be your loss leader. It will be your magnet. It will be all the things you're going to need for your indie career. And you did it and got it out of the way. And it also kept you from rushing. You didn't rush in. Many of these, the starter indie authors, they come to me like a month, 2-3 months after their book has come out and say, what do I do? It's not really selling. And I'm like, okay. So you can rescue a book. You can rescue one. Absolutely. And I have rescue plans, but it's so much harder than if you had launched in those first 30 days in a way that taught the algorithms who your reader was, what your market was. It's now going to be a lot harder. So do the practice one first. Get all that out of the way and be ready for that moment when you have 30 days to impress these retailers and explain to the algorithm who you are and what you've just written.
Yeah.
That's really great. Yeah.
That is so smart. And that rolls right into our next question.
Yes, it does.
What about marketing? What do you wish you'd known about marketing?
This lesson
that's some great advice already.
Yeah.
The lesson for marketing, I did not learn for a very long time. In 2014, after I had my first successful book at the end of 2013, I kind of was spinning gold. I published 13 books in 2014 because that was the year I started JJ Knight. And I was also writing off my successful Deanna Roy series. All of them succeeded. All of them just were crazy bestsellers. I made stupid amounts of money. It was my first big 6-figure year. The first year my accountant went, okay, Deanna, what are you doing? We got to get this under control. So I didn't have to worry too much about what I had to learn later. And that there are two kinds of books. There's the kind of book that mostly sells to a warm audience who knows you and loves you.
Yes.
And then there's the books that you can actually advertise to a cold audience who doesn't know you and they're still interested.
Right.
I didn't figure this out until I failed a whole bunch. And I kept like pulling my hair and gnashing my teeth. Why can I sell so many copies of books and then suddenly I can't get rid of these? I can't get anyone to buy them. It wasn't really until the Pickle, it's really recent, the Pickle series had its first low-performing book in the Pickleverse that I went, okay, it's happening again. What am I doing wrong? And it came down to one thing. The book that was doing less well did not appeal to people who weren't already fans of the Pickleverse. So it was only selling to repeat customers, to my superfans, to my newsletter list. It was not, when I put it out on Facebook or AMS ads, attracting people in big enough numbers that I could make a good profit off that book. At that point, I recognized what I was dealing with. I was dealing with a cold audience clunker. I could only really push. And this book was Spicy Pickle. It was the third pickle book. Spicy Pickle was only going to really appeal to my current market, and that I should stop all advertising on that one and let it be picked up as a backlist book. I actually had a book bub on it about a month ago. It was the second book bub, so I knew it wasn't going to perform as well, but it really underperformed. And I went, you know what? Spicy Pickle, I love you. You're amazing. I thought you were marketable, but really you're for the super fans. You know, I know now what I did. I mean, the cover's on point, the summary's on point, the tropes are on point. It's a fake engagement. That's one of the most popular tropes there is. But I didn't handle the fake engagement perfectly. It comes too late in the book. It's too emotionally fraught. And so a lot of people go, ooh, fake engagement. And then they get to about chapter 8. It still hasn't happened. They're like, screw it. And they quit reading. It's very clear to me they quit reading and they don't finish the book. So that's not a cold audience book. I need to keep that. My super fans who are going to stick with me, because they didn't pick it up for the trope. They picked it up because they like my stories.
Yes. Yeah. And we should say JJ Knight writes in the pickle verse, and it's
Yes.
all the pickle books, and which I love so much. And I mean, you could not have picked I mean, it's just gold for spicy romance. So and spicy, funny romance. So I think that you really did just hit the mark on that one. But that's so interesting because I think we don't think about that at all. We don't think about books that are, and I can see that I have at least one of those books. It's the third one in my Bride series. My regular readers stick with it because they know they can trust me. But new readers don't know they can trust me and that they're going to get that I'm going to bring them from the beginning of this book that has a little weird beginning to a very satisfying ending. And that's so interesting. And Deanna is this huge data person. She is like the person you want to go to. She and Pippa Grant could do like master classes on data and what your readers like and what you can bring to your readers that they will eat up with a spoon. So yeah, that's another reason I wanted you on, because you just have such great information about that.
I love my spreadsheets. My spreadsheets have spreadsheet babies. If this were a visual and I pulled up my spreadsheet, people would be like, oh, because they're color coded. They have heat maps. They're pretty incredible, and they're incredibly useful to me because what they do for me is tell me within 7 days of a new release. And sometimes I can see it even in pre-order that I should reduce my spend, or, oh no, I just got to go for broke on this book. When Tasty Mango, I did a cover test for Tasty Mango. It's in the Pickleverse by my JJ Knight book. I was just trying to figure out, I'd had a problem with the covers. Amazon was telling me that Big Pickle was too spicy of a title. When what it was really, it was the combination of the title and the cover image, because he's lying in a bed without a shirt. And I was working on, what do I do? Because I have to run these Amazon ads. And I was trying to find, where is my sweet spot? So I was cover testing for Tasty Mango. The single guy versus the couple in a more of a clinch. It was just a cover test. I usually spend about $30 on a cover test, but I could see from the cover test how many pre-orders I was getting. And this was for a KU book, a very clear KU book. I was like, I've got something here. Something about this book is going to go big. So I knew, like, we're going to max the credit cards. We're going to do everything. And it was worth it. It was completely worth it. That book took me to another level. So there's an amount that I can make on a launch. And then there's an amount that I can make on the months that I don't have a new book. And after Tasty Mango, I never got as low as I could before it. Like my baseline of what I earn is significantly higher than it ever was before.
Yeah. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And so were you testing all the covers
at that time I was testing three. So the first two books had released with, your typical man chest. But then I got in trouble and they weren't letting me, because I was doing pretty big marketing spends on Amazon. And I needed that marketing spend to start on day one. And I needed it to ramp up to like 4 figures a day. Right. And I only do it for like 7 days. I follow Sky Warren's very amazing plan. And if you get a chance to take one of Sky's classes, you should. Definitely helped me get to the next level. But if they were going to immediately pull my ads in like day 2 of my new release, I was going to struggle. So I was testing other covers to see if they would play as well. Could I recover the whole? And I did for Spicy Pickle, recover them all as couples. Within a week, I had changed it all again. But I was testing Tasty Mangoes. So I tested 3, a man chest and 2 couples. And that was the moment when I realized not only, no, it has to be a man chest, but 2, I have a book on my hands that is looking more popular than any book I've ever written. And it happened last summer that Tasty Mango became my best-selling book of all time. Wow. It actually beat Forever Innocent, even though Forever Innocent had an 11-year head start. That was the Kindle All-Star book. It went viral on TikTok. It made more money in its second year than it did in its first year. It's just my little workhorse. So if I ever just Sky is one of Skye Warren's things that she says to you is, what can you do in an hour to make $500? Well, for me, what I can do if I have a month that's looking low is I can like amp up my ad spend on that book and I can goose it temporarily to make a lot more money. It won't last and I'll eventually kind of go into the red. But for temporarily, if I can get to a new pocket of people who've never seen that book before, I can make a little bankroll. And when you have a book like that, it's going to work for you for your entire career. It's like Katy Perry's Fireworks song.
Yeah.
She says that's the book that's the song that will make her rich forever. She says that in some interviews. I'm like, Tasty Mango is my fireworks.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. I think Elena Johnson talks about books that are thoroughbreds and then books that are zebras. And so like, if we can distinguish early on, which is which, that's great. So I know people will be curious, were you changing out the covers in your books that were already live, or were you doing this on like a pre-order?
I did. Well, when I was doing my tests, it was in pre-order and I follow instructions. I'm very good about listening to what works in the community. I read all of the forums, I scan them every day. That's just part of my process. But I had a cover that only had the title treatment on it. So that all of the ads, if they saw it and they went to go pre-order it, they wouldn't get a moment of dissonance. Because if you have a cover test with a hot guy, and then you go and you've got a couple, they think it's the wrong book. And then they hesitate, and hesitation is worth at least a 30% drop off, if not 50% drop off. So I wanted to make sure when they saw it, because they're used to that. They're used to going to Amazon. I'm like, oh, she hasn't put the cover up yet. That does not create that drop off in a way that if it's a different cover.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I know, that is interesting. I love that. And I had not considered that because I've never really tested covers. Maybe to my detriment, but it's kind of worked for me. But I've always wondered how people do that. I've just wondered how that works, and that makes total sense.
I test all my covers now, all of them, because I'm terrible. I'm terrible about picking the winning cover. I'm an oddball. I'm a goof. I like weird stuff. Weird stuff does not make for best-selling books. So I rely on data.
That's true. That's true. And you do rely on data a lot. What assumptions did you make at the beginning of your writing career, and looking back, did they turn out to be right or wrong?
Oh, the biggest one is huge. It's so huge. I had this idea that once you were a six-figure author, you would always be a six-figure author.
Yeah.
You know, I had six figures, 2014, 2015, 2016, and my life changed at the end of 2015. And then I became a foster parent, and I didn't expect it all to cave in. Like it all caved in. Now I had planned for 2016 because I knew we would be getting children, and I knew that I would be using a lot of my time. We had been asking for slightly older kids. So I figured I think they'd be in school. I'd be able to do something.
Right.
I didn't expect that one of them would not be in school. And I didn't expect that my emotional energy would be completely gone. I also didn't expect my mom to die in her sleep that year while I had kids, an adoption to fall through. Luckily, 2016, I had an assistant who was amazing, and she worked almost full time for me. She was me that year. We box set everything I had. So we had a box set release every couple of months, and my 2016 income stayed at that six-figure range that I expected. But by 2017, with no new releases, I was starting to fall. Now, it was okay. I was still making a full-time amount of money, and I thought I can make this happen. And by 2017, things were calming down. So I started putting out books, but the trends had moved on. The marketing had moved on. I hadn't been able to do all the things I just told you about, which is like examine what's going on in our community, seeing what's working, seeing what's not. And I started faltering. In 2018, I faltered a little bit more, still making a full-time income. I thought, okay, I'm still okay. And then 2019 happened. And 2019 was the year I thought I was going to give up my indie career. There was the new trend I'd studied at that point was clean and wholesome romance. And none of us like that title, but that's the category on Amazon. So I started writing it. A rapid release was the rule of the day. So I wrote 4 in advance. The idea was I was going to release 6, drop 2, and then release 1 a month after that. I had beautiful covers made. I had checked the market, I thought, and I thought I had good covers that were going to work. And I started launching, and I hired a company to launch me in the suite space because that wasn't where I was. It was a new pen name. And I completely and absolutely fell on my face. The first 2 books made like $4,000 in the first month, which is a decent amount of money, but I'd spent $10,000. So that's not good, right?
No.
And then the other books started coming out and they were making like $500 each. And I was like, uh-oh. So I very quickly pivoted. I said, okay, I'm done with that pen name. I got to go back. I got to find my other pen names. But it was like running against the wind. I couldn't get anything to happen. And so by the end of 2019, I was like, I might have to get a job. This was the first time I thought this was going to happen. And it was a blow. It was a huge blow. I felt like I'd crashed all the way to the ground. I felt like an imposter. I felt this was the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
Now I did have an idea for the pickles story. I'd gotten the idea. We were sitting around with a bunch of friends. We had a book by, I think, Kara Bristol called Naughty Words for Nice Authors, right? It's a great little book of, it's a thesaurus for romance writers. And we were looking at all of the euphemisms for male anatomy.
Yeah.
And when somebody said pickle, it just popped into my head. Like, wouldn't it be funny if he actually worked at a deli? So he handled pickles all the time, right? And then the women handled the pickles and he passed the pickle. And all these pickle jokes like ran through my head. And I got my phone out and I typed, write a pickle romantic comedy set in a delicatessen. And I forgot about it. It had been sitting on my phone. At the end of 2019, I had already paid to go on this retreat with some really big authors. Julia Kent was there, Pippa Grant was there. And I mentioned their names because they were instrumental in what happened next. And we were just talking, going around the circle saying, what are you going to do next year? And I was nearly crying. I felt like such an imposter at this retreat. I felt like I'd just come all the way down. I didn't know whether I was even going to be writing next year. Right. And I thought I was just going to bust out crying. And I told Julia Kent my idea. And she's the one who spoke up. And she said, Deanna is going to write a series set in a delicatessen, starting with Big Pickle. And the whole room just went bananas. And several people said, you write that. We're going to help you promote this book. And that included Pippa. And so I thought, well, gosh, I guess I have to write it now. Mind you, I was still looking for jobs because I couldn't trust that this was going to actually pan out. Right. I was looking at big ad spends, big red marks in my business. I didn't think it was going to happen or work. And then the pandemic hit. So the pandemic took away my ability to really get another job because I had a kid at home who had big, who needed a lot of support. Right. So I thought, no, I've got to make this work. So I went for broke in a way that I hadn't gone for broke in a long time. I took Sky Warren's class. I paid a lot of money for that class, more money than I could really afford to do. But I learned really quickly, this is the way to do Facebook ads. And I said, okay, I've got this class. I've got this method of promoting. I've got some friends who are willing to help me. I got to make this happen. Yeah. I did the cover myself because I was having a hard time figuring out. I wanted to be able to pivot. Sometimes when you hire a cover designer, you feel wedded to that cover. And I wanted to be able to pivot on a dime. Like this cover doesn't work, do another one. This one doesn't work, do another one. So I just did it myself and I released that book and it was insane. It hit the top 100. Absolutely. My friends helped make that happen. This was nothing, but the Facebook ads kept it up there. And I was completely turned around. I mean, by mid-year, it was clear I was going to have another 6-figure year. And I was all the way back,
Yeah. Not amazing. And the 2 best people in the world to help you with a book like that, Pippa and Julia, because they both write similarly. Yes. They would, and Julia was so incredibly instrumental in when I first started too. She's just an amazing person and so very giving and really does not gatekeep. And so that's awesome. I don't think I'd heard the whole story. So I love that.
That's the whole story.
Yeah.
Well, and we've had Julia and Pippa both on the podcast.
Yeah,
so I'll put links to
because
absolutely
in the show notes because they have lots of good advice.
They do.
So that's amazing. And it's such a great story to hear, and it's encouraging to hear, because I think we all feel like imposters at one point or another. And obviously you'd had tons of success before.
Yeah.
So it can strike you at any time, I guess. So,
yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah. So what's the biggest change you've had to make in your thinking?
The biggest one was from what I thought at the beginning to where I am now, that traditional publishing is the only way. It's for many of us, actually, traditionally publishing is not the good way at this point, especially for romance authors. You really want to think like, do I want to try to go for a career in that space with the love hypothesis and some of those that are getting really big, and the TikTok darlings tend to be traditional. There's some indies, but they tend to be traditional. The TikTok tables at Barnes and Noble are by and large traditional. We now see Bloom Books, scraping up the best indies and putting them on those tables because they can. And that's been an amazing response to it.
Yeah.
But deciding that doing it on my own is fine. It is fine. It took a long time. When I first started, that stigma was really big. I had to just kind of be like, they can say these things, but that doesn't make them true.
Right.
But I sure was up against it for, a lot of years.
Yeah, that's really hard. I think that's hard for all of us. Even if we decide early that we're going to go indie, it's still in your mind.
Still in there.
It's still in your mind. You really only need one like my idol. Never meet your idols, but my idol, she made a disparaging comment about indie authors, and that stays in my head all the time. I know it's not true, but it rears its ugly head every once in a while, and I'm like, it's not true. It's not true. Don't tell me those words. Yeah, it's kind of hard.
I had a really.
Oh no, go ahead.
I had a really great moment with that a few years ago. I occasionally speak. I'm a big part of the Writers League of Texas. I've been a member since 96, and I usually speak at their agents conference, which is kind of strange because I'm such a hardcore indie, but they liked bringing me on. It just shows you how progressive they were from the beginning. Like, here's someone who's at first I was fairly successful, and then I became, much more successful, and they had me speak. So we had a panel. They like to bring me in kind of toward the end of the conference because some of the authors there had been shot down a lot that weekend by agents. Yeah. Because the whole point of the conference is to have people meet agents. Like, that's the whole point. But they would bring me in, and we had a panel called Big House, Small House, My Own House. And of course, I was my own house, and we had a Big Five editor there, and we had a small house editor there. And there might have been four of us. But the small house editor, whose name will not say, they were asking questions, and one of the guys stood up and said, what do we do if we've had like 100 rejections, and should we self-publish? And the guy next to me took the question. He said, if you can't get an agent, you have no business publishing your book.
Oh my gosh, I almost broke our no expletive.
So I was sitting right next to him, and there were two mics. So there were two mics. There was two for like the Big House and the other one. And then there was two mics between him and I. And I literally grabbed the mic, dragged it in front of myself, and said, I have had 360 agent rejections, and I made $250,000 last year. How much did you make?
Yeah.
And the whole room went nuts. Yeah. And afterwards we had this little cocktail hour, and everybody came up to me. They wanted to hug me because they're like, thank you. Thank you for telling us that we do not have to make those people happy to be successful.
Right.
That's a huge lesson. It's an important lesson.
Good for you. Good for you. I don't know if I would have had the cojones to, or cojones, however you say it. I'm not good with foreign languages.
And I'm not good with numbers. I'd be like, I made a lot of money. Trust me. So that sounds perfect.
Now, you have licensed the Pickleverse with a publisher, correct?
I have licensed JJ Knight Romantic Comedies. The Pickleverse is still mine. So when I signed a traditional deal last year, and the books are coming out starting next month in June, they specifically wanted a new series.
Okay.
So it's pretty common that they want your magic. They don't want to hang on to your old magic. Right?
Okay. They want new magic. Yeah.
So I wished, I had maybe negotiate it a little differently, but right now, JJ Knight is traditional. I released a book in January, but I don't have another one coming anytime soon. Kind of like, I'm going to wait and see. Let's see how this process goes. It's been a wonderful experience as far as the editors at Montlake, where I signed, which is an Amazon imprint. I went with them specifically because they were Amazon. JJ Knight is a KU author. I had released 9 books in the Pickleverse, and I felt like I'd sort of topped out. I couldn't get any higher, no matter what I did with my ad spends, no matter how I arranged my tropes, no matter how many butter scenes I put in from Theodora Taylor's 7-figure fiction. I just couldn't seem to get any higher. So that was when I said, I'm going to go to Montlake and see if they can get me higher. Right. So it was a great negotiation. I went in very powerfully because, my agent, I had signed with an agent previously for actually a young adult book. So it was kind of interesting how that laid out, like 2 parts of my life came together at the same time. I did finally get an agent completely separate from my indie career because I've never released a young adult book as an indie. I was kind of leaving that for my traditional space if it ever happened. I'd signed with the agent and I thought, well, I have this agent. So I went to her and said, hey, can we pitch only to Montlake? Montlake is the only traditional publisher I want as JJ Knight, because they understood. I'd seen Ilsa Madden Mills, Pippa signed with them, quite a few, Megan Quinn had signed. I thought they understand that we have an indie career, but we can augment that with some traditional publishing. So I'm comfortable with them. Yeah. So my agent was like, sure, let's pitch. And we did. They signed me, but we sent them numbers. I mean, it was very clear, like, this is what we do. You already know on the back end, plus like what my sales are, your Amazon. Yeah. So I went in with a position where they gave me almost exactly what I would have expected. So they met me exactly with a number that I would take. So that was part of it. That's great. The other part was, can their marketing machine internally find those pockets of readers I can't seem to reach? The ones that I'm using AMS ads for, the ones I'm using Facebook ads for, the one I'm getting through BookBub, all those things that I do, there's so many more. So that is what I'm hoping for. We do have some really big things happening. They did get me one thing I never thought I'd get, and I have an NDA on it. But when the book comes out, it'll be very clear what I got that I'd never gotten before. And I'm super excited about that happening. So the editors were amazing. The copy editors were brilliant. The whole process was just amazing. They listened to what I said about the covers. When they sent me a cover guide that they said, oh, he looks grumpy. It's a Grumpy Sunshine book. I said, no, he looks drunk. Goodbye. And they're like, okay, goodbye. And they chucked him. There was none of this pushback. Like, we know what we're doing. They're like, no, we're going to listen to her. So what kind of experience is that? It was amazing. So awesome. The whole experience has been great. I'm anxious to see how the release goes. Yeah.
So they bought, they own JJ Knight.
They will not technically. Technically, they only own this series and only own it for a year. Okay. But if I want to keep publishing with them, I have to send them my next book. Oh, okay. So if I publish it myself, then we're done. So, So that's what we're working at. So that's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting to see how we do. Yeah. And then I will either pitch them another book, or I'll be like, this was fun. What a great party. I'm going to go now.
I think that's great because
I left something in the oven. I got to get. Yeah.
It's like you've come full circle though, because like you had your moment where you're like, I can do this myself. And now you have an opportunity to possibly use traditional publishing to expand what you're doing. So you're taking it. I think it's very interesting.
And you come in with power, frankly, instead of a lot of us, I think, a lot of people that go to traditional publishers or query or whatever, we feel so powerless. Like, we're just like, please take us. And you're like, let me tell you what I bring to the table. And they already knew. So that was great. That's awesome.
Yeah. When you're a new author, you don't have many negotiating levers or tactics. You're kind of just at their mercy. So.
You got no leverage.
And well, honestly, the leverage is really only with Amazon imprints, because when we went on sub with my young adult, that leverage was not there. Yeah. Because they look at book scan, they look at print book sales, and for an indie that might not be very big. I mean, I do sell print, but nothing. I mean, such a tiny piece of the whole pie.
Yeah. It's a different game.
It doesn't impress them. My print sales are not impressive.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, tell us about your women's fiction, because you're doing that now as well, right?
Yeah, I did write my first women's fiction. I guess technically Baby Dust, if we go back to it, was kind of women's fiction, but it was such a niche. This one I wrote, in the broader sense of, some of the big authors, the big trad authors. I sort of like, I'm going to gun for that because I've loved those books. I love writing steamy romance, but I also like writing these like quieter seaside saga sort of kind of books. I had Abby, she had written all the sweet romance. I thought, well, I'm not going to go that route again, but the women's fiction is something, it's my hobby book. But I did set it up. I have set it up with all the tropes. I've set it up with the right cover. I've set it up to be a book that could make a big splash, but my expectations are different. I had such a blast writing it. It was such a joy. It reminded me why I always had this plan, like have these day job books, which I like to write and I enjoy writing. And yet they are on a schedule. They're on a deadline. I have to write them and release every so often to maintain, my day job. Same as you would have to turn in projects for a real job. This one I could do as fast or as slow as I wanted, but I had this space where I had written all these books. I've already got my 2 trad books done. They're ready to go. They're in advanced reader copy. They're just finished, and I had a gap. Like, well, I'm not going to pitch a book to them until I see how these do. I'm like, this is my opportunity to write whatever I want. And women's fiction is what it turned out to be. So I'm super excited. I have a Patreon. And one of the things I opted to do is like, who could read this book and kind of not just tell me if I've made a mistake, like you dropped this subject, or we saw this person and we never saw them again, but who would actually read it and talk to me? And I'm like, where are my super fans? And then I realized my Patreon is where my super fans are, and they don't care what I write. If I wrote a picture book, they would read it. If I wrote, a nonfiction on jogging, they would probably read it. So I went there, and my Patreon has been reading it. I've been releasing a chapter a day to the Patreon, and they're going bananas over it. They all feel like this is the strongest thing I've ever written. I ended up, because I was releasing a chapter a day, writing it almost like serial fiction. It had to have this really like powerful and then kind of at the end. So
dun,
they're like,
dun. Yeah.
So they're like, we can't wait for tomorrow. We want to see what happens. So I know that the pull taking you through the book is strong. And I set it up where I could write these kind of forever. It's just a small town on a fictional, seaboard, like little villa basically. And if it does badly, well then, yeah, it'll be my hobby. When I have free time, I'll add to it, but I won't have the expectations that it would sell like a pickle book.
Right. And tell us why you wanted to write it in how many days did you write this book?
Well, in 25 days.
Yeah, 25 days, 75,000 words in 25 days.
Well, honestly, Abby Tyler is the pen name I was going to use for this one. And she got a book bub out of the randomness of, I thought Abby had gotten a book bub randomly a couple of years ago in the middle of the pickle verse. And I'm like, I can't stop and write an Abby book. I've got a lot of momentum. But right now I thought, well, let's just try to get a book bub for her. If she doesn't get it, fine. I've got a book I'm working on for my agent. And if she does get it, well, why don't I just toss out another book? Because I think most people realize, or maybe you don't, that after a book bub, particularly after a free book bub, you've got 20, 30, 40, sometimes 70,000 people downloading your book in a very short period. If you can release a new project, even if it's just a box set of your old work, something new, in the 30 days following that period, it's going to have the best shot it will ever have of launching well. And the reason for that is that's where the recommendation engine is going to send everyone. They all just got a book from you the last 30 days. Amazon in particular loves to send out, well, a person you read recently has a new book out. They don't even have to follow you for Amazon to send that recommendation out, or to make it a pop-up after you buy some other book. So I thought, well, let me just capitalize on that momentum and write it really, really fast. And I use the Patreon fans to help me not make any mistakes, because I wasn't going to have time to really go over it and over it and over it. And sure enough, they would catch things. They're like, well, she loves her grandma. Where's her grandma? Don't forget to make her find her grandma. I'm like, oh no, I got to find the grandma. those were balls that I would have dropped writing this quickly. So anyway, but it was really fun. But that was why I did it so quickly. I'm trying to capitalize on that, because if Abby's ever going to have a redemption arc, which I don't know that she is, given that she nearly tanked my entire career, it will be here. This will be the redemption arc. Will it happen? I don't know.
Don't know. But I mean, it's what you said earlier. Your definition of success is to have enough full-time income to do these hobby projects. And I think that's great. Can you talk to us about the recommendation engine? I just think I've learned a lot from you about that. And I think our listeners would really enjoy hearing your thoughts on that and how Amazon works with that.
So I'll preface this with that I have one KU pen name and I have 3 wide pen names. So I'm coming at this from both points of view. But in particular with Amazon really likes new, recent, and proven. So if they know for a fact that someone has read all the way through one of your books, or they've downloaded more than one of your books, or even if a bunch of people have downloaded a book in the same categories with some of the similar keywords, and then here comes yours and it has that same cohort of readers, they are more likely to recommend your book in lots of places. There's multiple types of emails that go out. There's you follow this author, here's a new book, or we think you would like this book recommendation emails. There's a deal on an author that you have bought before, emails that go out. There's the pop-ups at the end of your Kindle when you finish a book. It says, here's what we suggest you read next. In the last year or so, we're seeing less and less that it's always another book by that author. It can be somebody else. If they think it's more likely that that the reader is going to choose a different book than even another by this author, they'll do it. They'll put that pop up there. So it can hurt you, it can help you, but you need to be aware of it as you make your plans. So the prevailing theory a long time ago that if you're going to do either a book bub, or as my friend Blair Babylon likes to say, a book snub, where you don't get the book bub and you instead do e-reader news today and free Booksy, and you stack a bunch of things to kind of get at least a good bump, regardless of which way you do it, you have 30 days to show off your ability to sell a book to the recommendation engine. So it can either be 30 days after a new book is launched or 30 books after you got a big bump of any kind. That is the moment when you want to release a new book or maybe introduce a new box set, because that is when you're new, shiny, and proven for that recommendation engine to place you in all these spots to get you in front of readers. It's also the best time to start advertising. Because there's lots of ways to start from zero, and we have lots of people out there who have classes on that. But that's hard. It's really hard. If you start with your $5 a day, it's just, Skye Warren calls it the sensitive barometer. It's really difficult to see if you're really making any traction or to make anything worth the time and effort you're putting into it when you're starting at, let's say, 200,000 in the ranks on Amazon and trying to get it up to where the recommendation engine will notice you. If you get a book above 20,000 in ranks, that's your moment. That's your moment to do all the things you've ever wanted to try. Amazon ads, BookBub ads, the ones that you pay for, not the featured deals, Facebook ads. That's your time, because that is the moment where there's already grease in the machine and you're greasing it more and greasing it more. If you're trying to pay for a click ad, and Amazon works on relevance, and honestly, all the retailers work on relevance. If they don't feel you have relevance to other books, they're not going to recommend you. Now, relevance can be bought. Relevance can be created. One of this women's fiction novel, I put it up for pre-order. And the very first thing I noticed, I didn't tell any of my fans it was out because I'm scared to, because they're all pickle readers and they're going to go mess it all up. So I was trying to see who were the also bots, who were the sponsored row beneath that book. And it was all steamy romance. So I went, no, because I've just ruined the whole launch. Because now Amazon's going to say, well, everybody is steamy that, it seems to be buying this book in pre-order. So when it releases, we're going to send it out to a bunch of steamy readers. Well, there's no steam in this women's fiction at all. So they're very quickly going to look at it and go, no, thank you. And then Amazon's going to go, oh, this book's a dud, I'm going to quit recommending it. The recommend engine will just flatline your book. And that's how a book fails. I needed my relevance to be bought. I had two ways to do it. One was that I did a very low spend, $10 a day Facebook ad, specifically to 2 or 3 really big trad authors in this space. And it'll be different for all of you, whether you're a thriller or whatever. You find who those big trad authors are. You send a very low spend ad to there, and I fixed it within $30. I won't even say how many days. It was $30. It's all I had to spend, and it was all fixed. I saw a bunch of umbrellas and beach cottages and inns. I'm like, yes, that was what I'm supposed to have down there. Now I know that the recommendation engine understands my book and who to market it to. The second thing you could do, and I did both of these things, is I have an email list. So I sent an email out, just random, like, hey, everybody, here's me. And I put 2 books in it. I put a steamy book, and then I put a piece of women's fiction that would be a perfect also bought for my book. And then I waited a week, and I saw who chose the little beach umbrella book over the hot, steamy guy. I collected that very small group of people. It was very small. And then I sent them the pre-order to my book. They were the very first people who got the links to my pre-order. When they clicked on it, that was it, because obviously they were choosing it over steamy. That told me their backlist of reading was going to match this book. So between those 2 things, I fixed it, and now I'm ready to launch.
That's just fabulous. I did that with back when the scammers were all, at one book that I had coming out on the pre-order, the also bots were a lot of those scammers, and I didn't want them in my so I ran some Amazon ads directly to more rom-com kind of thing. And I was able to fix it too, but it took it longer than, what did you say, 3 days? It took it about a week, but still it was better than having, plus those books were steamier than mine, so it's not a great thing, but I think that is so smart. And just grabbing those, emails and sending the pre-order link. That's really, that's great.
There's a lot of advice out there to find the people that are the authors that are in the top 100 of Amazon, or the books that are in the top 100 of your genre, and then run your ads to those books. And I don't think that's the best way. The best way is to find what Amazon already thinks and work with that. So if you look at that sponsored row, if you look at your author page and see, other authors these people read, those are the people you need to be targeting. Find the best of those and then work your way up as you move higher. Because if you are, like Pippa Grant's been like number 1 and number 2 for weeks now, everybody and their dog is going to try to hit on her name on Amazon ads. But unless you're a really good fit and relevant, then you're just bidding yourself into oblivion. It's not going to work. Start down lower, start lower to where you are and climb that ladder. Pay the 30, the 40, the 50 cent bids. Don't go for the $3 bids just to get in that top 100, place of impressions.
Relevancy, so important.
It is. And I don't know that we talk about it enough. When we're talking ads and stuff like that. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. That was really great.
Well, this has been so good. So much good information.
Yes.
Just like solid gold information throughout the whole thing. So, but we do always like to ask, what is the best thing you think you've done to set yourself up for success?
Absolutely. 100%. It's finding other authors to go on the journey with. I think at every juncture in my career where I was at a point where I had to either go big or take my ball and go home, there was someone there to say, okay, Deanna, I think this is what you could change and make this work. Whether it was way back in 2013 with Forever Innocent, when I was on book 13 and I was trying to raise money to adopt a child. And they were like, we're going to get this adoption money for you. You're going to take this baby loss information from Baby Dust, that very intense storyline, and you're going to put it in a new adult romance. And then we're going to kill it. And nobody had done that. Nobody had given a young couple a baby loss storyline. And that book just catapulted me into having a career. And then, of course, infamously, when I thought I'd all crashed to the ground, it was sitting in a room with several, other authors who said, nope, you're going to write this book because it's a great idea and we're going to help you. And if you can find that in your life, whether you start with, the K-boards or a Discord server on Clubhouse or on a Facebook group, wherever it is that you like to live, that is what's going to get you through this. Whether everybody has a part, whether they're the people who lift you up or even if it's the complainers. I love to listen to the people who are upset and frustrated because I learn from them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not selling any books. Well, I like to go look at their book and I'm like, oh, I bet it's their cover. Oh, I don't, their blurb is too long. And I learn from them too. So there's a place for everybody in your circle, but in your closest circle, of course, you want the ones who are going to lift you up.
Yeah. That's more gold right there. That's so good. That's so good. Well, tell people where they can find all about you and your books and all of that good stuff.
So jjknight.com is where you can enter the Pickleverse. I just had to retool it. It was kind of interesting. Like, oh my gosh, I've got these big books coming out from Montlake and they're not pickle books. And my whole thing was wrapped around that. So now it looks, I'm like still trying to figure out how to design it to like, these books look very different than the other books, but that is where I'm found. If you want to talk to me, you most likely will find me on Facebook. My Facebook group is so amazing. They make me go to Facebook every day. And it's a joy to go to Facebook because my group sustains me. My fans sustain me. So I love that as well. So you can find me as Deanna Roy. You can find me as JJ Knight. If you want to stalk like everything I do, like all my pen names, my daughter took a gap year because she was a pandemic graduate and she built a website for me called readlaughswoon.com. And there, all my pen names get to commingle and be part of the thing.
I love
awesome. That is great.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Well, we will have all those links in the show notes. And just thanks for coming on today and sharing so much good information. And thanks to Alexa Larberg for editing and producing the podcast, and to Adriel Wiggins for doing all the admin. We'll see everybody next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. We hope this episode inspired you, empowered you, and made you laugh a little bit too. If you loved it, tell your friends about it. And if you feel so inclined, leave us a review. We look forward to being with you again next week.